Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her monitor in the Orbital Debris Analysis Center, her coffee going cold beside her keyboard. The data patterns she'd been tracking for the past 6 months made absolutely no sense. As head of NASA's Advanced Debris Tracking Initiative, she'd seen every kind of space junk imaginable, but nothing like this. "Hey, got a minute?" Tom Rodriguez, her deputy, poked his head into her office. His usual easy smile faded when he saw her expression. "Another anomaly." Sarah nodded, gesturing him over. "Look at these readings from the LiDAR array. These objects, they're appearing out of nowhere, breaking apart in ways that defy physics. And then," she gestured at the screen, where a cluster of data points simply vanished. "Could be sensor ghosts," Tom suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. They both knew their equipment was too sophisticated for such basic errors. "Sensor ghosts don't leave behind exotic particle signatures," Sarah replied, pulling up another window filled with spectrographic data. "Whatever these things are, they're not space junk. At least, not any kind we've ever documented before." The quiet hum of computers filled the silence as Tom studied the readings. Outside their reinforced windows, the New Mexico desert stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun. The facility had been built here specifically for its isolation and clear skies, perfect for tracking the growing cloud of debris that surrounded their planet. "When did you first notice this pattern?" Tom asked, pulling up a chair. "Remember that weird incident last month? The one where SpaceX reported unexpected trajectory adjustments during their ISS resupply mission?" Sarah pulled up a timeline on her second monitor. "I started digging deeper after that. These events, they're not random. They're concentrated in specific orbital paths. Almost like..." "Like what?" "Like someone's testing our defenses," Sarah finished quietly. Tom laughed, but it sounded forced. "Our defenses? Sarah, Earth doesn't have orbital defenses, unless you count the Space Force's handful of satellites." "Exactly." Sarah stood up and walked to the whiteboard that covered one wall of her office. It was filled with equations and orbital diagrams. "But what if we do have defenses, just not the kind anyone expected?" She began drawing, her marker squeaking against the board. "Look at Earth's orbital space. We got over 50 years' worth of satellites, rocket stages, and debris up there. Most spacefaring civilizations would have cleaned this up centuries before attempting serious space travel. But we haven't. We've just learned to work with it." Tom's eyes widened as he began to follow her logic. "You're saying our mess is actually a weapon. An unintentional one, maybe." Sarah continued sketching. "Think about it. We've developed incredible systems for tracking and predicting the movements of thousands of objects in orbit. Our space programs have evolved to navigate through this chaos. What if a more advanced civilization, one used to clean, organized orbital spaces, simply couldn't handle this environment?" She pointed to one of the anomalous readings. "These energy signatures, they're consistent with some kind of advanced technology trying to phase through solid matter. But in our orbital space, even if you could phase through one piece of debris, there would be 10 more coming from unexpected angles," Tom finished, "like trying to dodge raindrops in a hurricane." Sarah nodded eagerly. "Exactly. And look at the timing of these incidents. They spike whenever we launch something new into orbit, almost like something's trying to study our launch patterns," Tom said slowly, "and failing spectacularly." A sudden alert chimed from Sarah's computer, drawing their attention. New data was streaming in from their orbital sensors. Another anomaly was forming, bigger than any they'd seen before. "Tom," Sarah said quietly, "I don't think these are just random test probes anymore. This pattern, it looks like a fleet." The data continued to stream across their screens as the two scientists watched in stunned silence. Above their heads, in the crowded orbital space around Earth, humanity's accidental defense system was about to face its greatest test, and prove that sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced technology, but the chaotic evolution of a species that had learned to thrive in its own mess. As they stared at the incoming data, neither Sarah nor Tom realized they were about to become key players in humanity's first contact with alien life, a contact that would reveal Earth's orbital debris field as the most effective planetary defense system in the galaxy and transform humanity's greatest spacefaring weakness into its greatest strength. The alert continued to sound, its steady rhythm matching the increasing pace of Sarah's heartbeat. Whatever was coming, it was about to learn a harsh lesson about humanity's unique approach to space travel. In the orbital paths above, where humanity's chaotic history had created an impenetrable web of debris, the ultimate test of Earth's accidental defense system was about to begin. High above the crystalline spires of Nexus Prime, Supreme Observer Cthair watched the holographic display with mounting concern. The latest fleet dispatched to study Earth's orbital defense system had just vanished, joining countless others in what the collective now grimly called the Terran Graveyard. "Play it again," Cthair commanded, his photoreceptors adjusting to better analyze the data stream. The hologram flickered, showing the carefully orchestrated approach of their most advanced stealth vessels. They had followed every protocol, utilized their finest phase-shifting technology, yet the result remained the same: total fleet loss. "Fascinating, isn't it?" The voice came from First Analyst Zora, her silicon-based form gliding smoothly across the observation deck. "We've spent 10,000 cycles perfecting space travel, yet these humans have created something we cannot comprehend, much less defeat." Cthair's outer membrane rippled with frustration. "Created? They've done nothing but litter their orbital space with primitive machinery and debris. It's an embarrassment to spacefaring civilization. An embarrassment that has destroyed our finest ships," Zora countered, interfacing directly with the holographic display. The image shifted, showing Earth's orbital paths in precise detail. "Look at the patterns. What do you see?" Cthair studied the display. The chaos of human orbital space was displayed in all its cluttered glory. Satellites crossing paths with abandoned rocket stages, clouds of microscopic debris moving at lethal velocities, and countless pieces of human technology in varying states of decay. "I see primitive waste," Cthair responded. "A species too primitive to clean up after themselves." Zora's crystalline form pulsed with amusement. "Look deeper. See how they navigate through this chaos. Their vessels don't try to plot perfect paths. They adapt, constantly adjusting, embracing the unpredictability." A hologram zoomed in on a human space station making minute adjustments to avoid a piece of debris. The movements weren't calculated with quantum precision like collective vessels. They were rough, intuitive, effective. "Our ships rely on perfect information and predictable environments," Zora continued. "We've designed our technology to eliminate variables. But the humans," she gestured at the display, "they've evolved to thrive in chaos. Their orbital defense system isn't a system at all. It's an ecosystem." A new alert flashed across the display. Cthair's membrane darkened as he processed the information. "The combined fleet is demanding action. Earth's position near critical hyperspace lanes makes it too strategically valuable to ignore." "The combined fleet is afraid," Zora said quietly. "For the first time in our history, we've encountered a defense we cannot analyze, cannot predict, and cannot defeat. And the humans don't even know it exists." The observation deck fell silent as they watched another human satellite adjust its course, unknowingly forcing a cloaked collective probe to collide with a defunct communications array. The probe's destruction registered as nothing more than another piece of space debris in human tracking systems. "Perhaps," Cthair said slowly, "we've been approaching this wrong. Our attempts at stealth and technological superiority have failed. Maybe it's time for a different approach." Zora's form brightened with interest. "What are you suggesting?" "The humans have mastered something we never considered valuable: the ability to navigate chaos, instead of trying to defeat their orbital defense system." Cthair's photoreceptors focused on the image of Earth, spinning serenely below its protective shell of debris. "Perhaps we should learn from it." "The combined fleet will never agree to learn from primitives," Zora warned. "They'll have to," Cthair replied. Because I've just detected something troubling in the latest data streams. The humans, they're starting to notice our failed incursions. Their orbital tracking systems are more sophisticated than we realized. Soon, they'll have proof they're not alone in the universe. The hologram shifted again, showing two human scientists in a facility deep in Earth's desert regions. They were analyzing data patterns that should have been far beyond their primitive technology's capability to detect. We need to make contact, Cathur decided. Not as conquerors or observers, but as students. The humans have accidentally created the perfect defense system, one that cannot be defeated because it follows no logic but its own. And if they refuse to teach us, Cathur's membrane rippled with what passed for amusement in his species. They won't. If there's one thing we've learned about humans, it's their insatiable desire to share knowledge. Their primitive information networks are filled with freely shared data about their own technology, culture, and sciences. They want to teach. We just need to be willing to learn. As if to emphasize his point, the hologram showed a new alert. The humans had just launched another satellite, its unplanned trajectory forcing 3 more cloaked collective probes to execute emergency maneuvers. 2 collided with debris. The third vanished into what appeared to be a cloud of paint chips moving at orbital velocities. Send word to the combined fleet, Cathur commanded. Tell them I'm implementing protocol first contact. It's time we stopped trying to study the humans from afar and started learning from them directly. After all, his photoreceptors dimmed in what passed for ironic amusement. What better way to understand chaos than to embrace it? Dr. Sarah Chen's presentation to NASA's executive board was interrupted by the loudest alarm she'd ever heard in her 15 years at the Orbital Debris Analysis Center. The massive screen behind her, which had been showing graphs of anomalous debris patterns, suddenly filled with urgent alerts. We have multiple objects materializing in high Earth orbit, Tom Rodriguez announced, his fingers flying across his tablet. Count is 17. No, 23 distinct objects. Nothing like any debris signature we've ever recorded. The NASA executives, who moments ago had been skeptical of Sarah's alien debris theory, were now standing, their faces illuminated by the red warning lights. Are we looking at a collision cascade? Director Harrison asked, referring to the nightmare scenario where orbital debris created a chain reaction of destruction. No, Sarah replied, studying the new data streams. These objects, they're moving with purpose, and they're massive, each one larger than the International Space Station. High above Earth, Supreme Observer Cathur watched as the combined fleet made its presence known. Despite his warnings, the Fleet Council had opted for a show of force. 25 of their most powerful ships had dropped their cloaking fields, arranged in a formation that had cowed countless civilizations into submission. They're scanning us, Zara reported, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. The humans' primitive radar systems are more effective than anticipated. They've already cataloged our fleet's basic configuration. Cathur's membrane darkened. The Council doesn't understand. They think demonstrating our technological superiority will force the humans to acknowledge our dominance. They haven't learned anything from our previous failures. In the Orbital Debris Analysis Center, Sarah was reaching the same conclusion. Look at their formation. She pointed to the screen. It's perfect, too perfect. They're maintaining exact distances between ships, precise orbital paths. Tom's eyes widened as he understood. They're completely ignoring the debris field, not even trying to account for it. Exactly. Sarah pulled up another display, showing the complex dance of objects in Earth's orbit. And in 3, 2, 1, the first piece of debris, a defunct weather satellite, struck the alien formation's outer edge. The ship's advanced shields easily deflected it, but the debris field was responding to the new massive objects in its midst, patterns shifting, chains of cause and effect rippling outward. In his command center, Cathur watched with grim satisfaction as the combined fleet's perfect formation began to deteriorate. They still think their shields will protect them. They don't understand that each deflection, Each use of energy creates new patterns in the debris field. Incoming, Zara announced. Multiple debris streams converging on multiple vectors. The combined fleet's response was textbook perfect and completely wrong for the situation. As each ship activated its defensive systems to deflect the incoming debris, their energy emissions created localized distortions in Earth's magnetic field. These distortions altered the trajectories of thousands of smaller objects, creating new threat vectors that the fleet's sophisticated prediction systems couldn't process fast enough. Back on Earth, every space agency's tracking system was lighting up. "It's like watching a cosmic game of pinball," Tom muttered, transfixed by the unfolding chaos above them. "Their energy shields are actually making things worse." Sarah nodded. "Every attempt to impose order on the system just creates more chaos. They're fighting against the very nature of our orbital space, and they're losing." The combined fleet's formation had completely broken down. 3 ships had already vanished, not destroyed, but forced to make emergency jumps to escape the escalating debris field. Others were spinning out of control, their perfect positioning shattered by the need to constantly evade. Kithair opened a channel to the fleet commander. "You must abort this demonstration. Your ships are only making the situation more volatile." "Impossible." The commander's response crackled with static. "These are primitive weapons. Our shields." The commander's transmission cut off as his flagship was forced to execute an emergency maneuver to avoid a cloud of particles that their sensors hadn't even classified as a threat. The movement saved them from the particle cloud, but put them directly in the path of a tumbling rocket booster. "Fascinating," Zara observed as another ship vanished. "The human's orbital defense system doesn't just defeat advanced technology. It actually uses that technology's sophistication against it. The more we try to impose our order on their chaos, the more chaotic it becomes," Kithair finished. "Send an emergency signal to all remaining ships. Tell them to power down non-essential systems and prepare for immediate withdrawal." In the debris center, Sarah and her team watched as the alien ships began to disappear from their sensors. "They're retreating," Tom said, disbelief evident in his voice. "The most advanced spacecraft we've ever encountered, and they were defeated by our junk." Sarah shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Not junk. Evolution. We evolved our space program in this environment, learned to work with it instead of against it. They tried to impose their version of order on a system that follows its own rules." As the last alien ship vanished from their sensors, Director Harrison cleared his throat. "Dr. Chen, I believe we're going to need a more detailed briefing on your theories about our orbital debris field, and perhaps some recommendations about how to maintain this apparently effective defense system." Sarah looked at the screen, where the debris field was already settling back into its usual patterns. "Of course, Director. But first, I think we need to prepare for something else." "What's that?" "First contact," she replied. "Because after this demonstration, I don't think they'll try to conquer us. I think they'll want to learn from us. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation." The conference room at NASA's Johnson Space Center had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Dr. Sarah Chen sat beside Tom Rodriguez, watching as the holographic figure of Supreme Observer Kithair flickered into existence above the center of the table. The alien's membrane-like body rippled with patterns that the hastily assembled Sino-linguistic team suggested indicated respect and curiosity. "We appreciate your willingness to meet," Kithair's translated voice emerged from speakers around the room. "Though I must admit, this is not how we typically conduct first contact procedures." "You mean you usually don't try to sneak around a civilization's orbit first?" Sarah asked, unable to keep a hint of amusement from her voice. Behind her, several military officers shifted uncomfortably at her directness. Kithair's membrane patterns shifted to what they'd learned indicated amusement. "Point taken, Dr. Chen. Our standard protocols proved inadequate for your unique situation, which is precisely why we're here." First Analyst Zara's crystalline form appeared beside Kithair's projection. We've spent the last several planetary rotations analyzing the data from our fleets. Unfortunate demonstration. The Combined Fleets Council is still struggling to accept the implications. Tom leaned forward. That the most advanced ships in the galaxy were defeated by what you considered space garbage. That complexity is not always an advantage, They're corrected. Our civilizations have spent millennia perfecting space travel, creating systems that eliminate variables and maximize predictability. Yet in doing so, we may have evolved ourselves into a corner. On screens around the room, data began to appear, detailed analyses of Earth's orbital space, showing the intricate dance of debris and functional satellites. Sarah recognized some of her own research among the displays. Your orbital defense system, Zara began. It's not actually a defense system, Sarah interrupted. It's just the result of our technological evolution. We never planned it this way. Precisely. Kther's form pulsed with excitement. That's what makes it so remarkable. You've created something we couldn't achieve with all our advanced technology. A truly adaptive system that becomes stronger the more someone tries to impose order upon it. General Morrison, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Are you saying you want to learn from us? An allegedly primitive species that can't even clean up its own orbital space. General, Zara's crystalline form shimmered. Your species has achieved something remarkable. You've turned what we saw as a weakness into your greatest strength. Your space programs don't just survive in chaos. They thrive in it. Every launch, every maneuver, demonstrates an intuitive understanding of complex systems that our logical approaches can't match. Sarah studied the alien data displays, her scientific curiosity overtaking her initial caution. Your ships tried to use computational power to plot safe paths through our orbital space, but that's not how we do it. No, Kther agreed. You use a combination of rough calculation and intuitive adjustment. Your spacecraft don't try to predict every possible obstacle. They react and adapt in real time. It's beautiful in its own way. Tom pulled up some of their recent tracking data. These patterns here, were these all your ships? Failed observation attempts, Zara confirmed. Each one destroyed or driven away by what you call orbital debris. Our most sophisticated stealth and phase-shifting technology, defeated by paint chips and abandoned rocket stages. Which brings us to our proposal, Kther said, his form stabilizing into what they'd learned was a formal posture. We wish to establish a joint space exploration initiative, not to teach, but to learn. Your species has developed an approach to space travel that could revolutionize how we think about navigation and defense. General Morrison frowned. And in return, we share our technological knowledge, within reasonable limits, Kther replied. But more importantly, we offer partnership. Earth's orbital space has unintentionally become the most effective planetary defense system known to any civilization. We believe studying how you achieve this could benefit all spacefaring species. Sarah looked at the displays showing the complex interactions of Earth's orbital debris field. You want to understand chaos. We want to understand adaptation, Zara corrected. Your species has mastered something we've spent millennia trying to eliminate. The ability to work with uncertainty rather than against it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's greatest spacefaring embarrassment had become its greatest advantage, and now advanced alien civilizations wanted to learn from them. There will need to be discussions, General Morrison said carefully. At the highest levels. Of course, Kther agreed. But perhaps while the politicians and military leaders debate, we could begin a scientific exchange. Dr. Chen, your research into orbital pattern recognition has already provided insights our best analysts missed. Sarah glanced at Tom, who nodded slightly. I think we'd be very interested in comparing notes, she said. Though I have to warn you, our methods might seem a bit chaotic by your standards. Kther's membrane rippled with what they now recognized as genuine amusement. Dr. Chen, I believe that's precisely what we're counting on. 5 years after first contact, the International Space Adaptation Center stood as humanity's most ambitious project to date. Built in geosynchronous orbit, its irregular structure deliberately incorporated debris shields and adaptive positioning systems that would have given traditional alien engineers nightmares. To Dr. Sarah Chen, it was simply home. "The Centauri delegation is arriving in 10 minutes," Tom Rodriguez announced, floating into the observation dome, where Sarah was reviewing the latest simulation data. "They're using one of their new hybrid chips. Zara says she's eager to show you the improvements." Sarah smiled, remembering the initial shock when alien engineers first attempted to incorporate human chaos theory into their ship designs. The result had been interesting. How many course corrections did they need to make during approach? "Only 3. Tom replied with a grin. "They're learning. Though I noticed they still kept their distance from the Powell Belt." He gestured to the deliberately maintained debris field that now served as Earth's officially recognized defensive zone. The observation dome's screens activated, showing the approaching Centauri vessel. Its crystalline structure was still beautifully alien, but the movement patterns were distinctly human-influenced, less rigid, more fluid, adapting to the space around it rather than trying to force its way through. Supreme Observer Cthulhu's report to the Combined Fleet Council was approved. Sarah noted, pulling up the latest diplomatic updates. Earth is officially being recognized as the center for advancement in adaptive space navigation. Ironic, Tom mused, watching as more ships appeared on their screens, vessels from a dozen different alien civilizations, all coming to learn from the species that couldn't keep its orbital space clean. "We spent years thinking we were behind everyone else in space technology." We still are, in many ways," Sarah corrected. "But we understood something they didn't. Sometimes, the messiest solution is the best solution." The dome screen shifted to show Earth's orbital spaces. What had once been seen as a hazardous debris field was now recognized as one of the most sophisticated defense and training systems in known space. The Powell Belt gleamed with newly installed tracking beacons, while designated chaos zones served as proving grounds for ships testing new adaptive navigation systems. Latest results from the Adaptive Navigation Initiative, Zara announced, her crystalline form materializing in the dome as her ship completed its docking procedures. The new hybrid systems are showing a 60% improvement in response time to unpredictable obstacles. "Still not as good as human pilots," Sarah noted with a hint of pride. "That's because we're still trying to program intuition," Zora admitted. "Cthulhu thinks it might be impossible to fully replicate the human approach to chaos navigation, which is why the Council is proposing something new." She projected a hologram showing a massive structure, a space station unlike anything Sarah had seen before. "Is that the first Interstellar Chaos Navigation Academy?" Zora confirmed. "To be built in Earth orbit, staffed by human instructors teaching alien pilots how to think. Well, how to think like humans." Tom laughed. "You want us to teach other species how to be messy. We want you to teach us how to adapt." Cthulhu's voice joined the conversation as his membrane form shimmered into view. "The Combined Fleet's latest analysis confirms what we discovered 5 years ago. The future of space travel isn't in perfect prediction and control. It's in the ability to navigate chaos." Sarah watched as another ship arrived, this one using a particularly elegant combination of alien technology and human navigation principles. "We're still learning too," she pointed out. "Your phase-shifting technology, when combined with our adaptive positioning systems, has created entirely new possibilities for space exploration." Cthulhu agreed. "Which brings me to our next proposal. We've detected what appears to be a naturally occurring debris field at the edge of known space, the kind of environment that would have been considered impossibly dangerous 5 years ago." "But now?" Sarah asked, already guessing where this was going. "Now we have ships that can handle it, pilots who understand it, and most importantly," Cthulhu's membrane rippled with excitement, "we have humans who can teach us how to turn chaos into opportunity. The Combined Fleet is proposing a joint expedition. Humanity's first official mission beyond known space. Sarah looked out at Earth's orbital space, where ships from across the galaxy now trained to navigate what they once considered impossible. Humanity had taken its greatest weakness and turned it into something revolutionary, not through advanced technology, but through the simple acceptance that sometimes the best way forward was through the chaos, not around it. "When do we start?" she asked. The observation dome filled with new data as Kithair began outlining the mission parameters. Outside, Earth continued its eternal dance through space, its orbital debris field now serving as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful innovations come not from imposing order on chaos, but from learning to dance with it. In the years that followed, the legend of Earth's orbital defense system evolved into something else entirely, a symbol of how a species' greatest perceived flaw could become its greatest strength. And in the vast darkness of space, a new era of exploration began, led by those who had learned that true adaptation meant embracing the chaos rather than fighting it.